Hi friends, welcome to my channel. My name is Sona. I'm a content creator, a journalist, a mom of three, and I'm an Armenian Apostolic Orthodox Christian. On this channel, we talk about Orthodox Christian life, faith, motherhood, creativity, all the ordinary ways we meet God in the middle of our messy, beautiful days. And if you haven't yet, I'd love you to check out my new podcast, Dust and Glory, where I speak with incredible guests about faith, family, and life in our modern world, from priests to artists to everyday people finding holiness in daily life. You can find it right there on my channel under the Dust and Glory playlist. Growing up as Armenian in Russia left a certain imprint on my soul, a mixture of frost and warmth, sorrow and strength, poetry and prose. Many of the habits I carry into my adult life were formed quietly in the backdrop of long winters and endless bookshelves filled with voices of people who suffered, loved, thought, and wrote deeply. Both Armenian and Russian cultures shape not only how I live, but how I feel life. As Dostoevsky wrote, the mystery of human existence lies not in just staying alive, but in finding something to live for. These habits taught me to live with purpose, even in the smallest things. Here are the 10 habits Russian culture gave me that I still carry with me even now as an Armenian American. Number 1, reading. To be culturally Russian for me is to be surrounded by books. The smell of paper, the weight of thick novels, Pushkin's verses on my lips as I open my eyes on frosty sunny morning. Turgenev, Gogol, Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, Chekhov, they are part of the air you breathe in Russia. Reading isn't a hobby there. It is a way of becoming a human. Children grow up reading classics there. Students read Tolstoy's novels in the 3rd grade, in the 9th grade novels like Crime and Punishment or War and Peace that force them to think. Adults read poetry that carries them through hardship. Books taught me empathy. Russian literature in particular is deeply Orthodox in its core. That's how Soviet people were able to remain in touch with their true Christian culture and values through the years of oppression and raging atheism by reading classical Russian literature. And reading these books helped me to affirm and explain my faith. But Russians have deep appreciation for not only their classics, but for the international literature as well. These were the books that shaped my imagination. They made me understand that life is richer and is lived in a more profound way when you carry these stories inside you. Reading wasn't entertainment then, it was nourishment for the soul. And it is still for me to this day. There were years in my life when I used to read over 100 books a year. Now, barely 20 to 30 books, but even that keeps my inner world alive. A few pages before bed, a chapter stolen during nap time. They feed the part of me that still longs for beauty and depth and silence. Number 2, Memento mori, remembering death. As an Armenian whose Christian history is built on the blood of the martyrs, I can surely acknowledge that Russians suffered a lot through centuries. Russian history is filled with wars and famine and exiles and many tragedies. Because of this, Russians grow up with an intimate awareness of mortality. Yet strangely, it's not morbid, it's grounding. It gives life depth. Russian literature is similarly shaped by this awareness, carrying a deep sense of suffering, humility, and the fragile nature of life. The great Russian writers didn't avoid the darkness of the human soul, they entered it bravely and searched for God there. That's why their books feel like confessions, like prayers whispered through grief. They remind you that life is short, that repentance matters, that being a human matters, and that in every tragedy, the life of Christ can break through. Pasternak wrote in Dr. Zhivago, man is born to live, not to prepare for life. Remembering death teaches you to live, to wake up fully, to appreciate the fragile gift of each breath. This habit shaped my spiritual life deeply. It taught me to live with humility and gratitude. It taught me to forgive quickly and not let the sun go down on my wrath. It taught me to see prayer not as a task, but as a lifeline. Remembering death doesn't darken life, it actually brightens it. Avoiding conversations about death, avoiding looking in the eyes of death, that's what darkens our relationship with life. Number 3, enjoying nature even when it's freezing outside. Now let's get to physical, life-changing habits. Russians understand the beauty of winter, the sharp air that wakes up your bones. Snowflakes so delicate they look like glass icons from heaven. It's easy for me to talk about it while enjoying this divine climate of California, but sometimes I do miss winter. There's so much poetry dedicated to the seasons of Russian nature. That clarity is exactly what cold brings, not only to the eyes, but to the mind and spirit. Being outdoors in freezing weather taught me resilience as a child. You bundle up, you step outside, and remember you're stronger than you think. Russians take their kids out every day religiously, even newborns, even when it's freezing outside. You can always spot moms walking for hours in the parks and forests with their babies in strollers. Even now, I make sure my kids spend at least 2-3 hours outside every day, even when it's hard. We don't have a backyard, so going out means actually getting dressed and going out. I do love this habit because Russians know a secret. Fresh air and sunshine cures more illnesses and heartbreaks and bad moods than staying indoors ever could. Number 4, walking through life instead of driving. Walking in Russia feels almost spiritual, especially in the center of the city with all the beautiful, inspiring architecture around. Even when you hurry, and Moscow is a very busy city, the world still moves slower around you. The rhythm of footsteps on snow, the breath turning into clouds, the steady pace that forces your heart to calm down. When you walk, you belong to the land. You notice things, you think differently, you see things, you become aware of yourself. Walking teaches simplicity. It teaches you to pay attention to little things. Public transportation in Moscow, where I lived the majority of my life, is excellent, so there was no need for me to drive at all. And endless encounters with strangers forced me to see others, see and acknowledge that their lives matter too. Doesn't mean that all my encounters were pleasant, but they definitely teach me something. It's easy to isolate yourself from the rest of the world when you're locked in a car. I can't tell you how many wonderful, unforgettable conversations I've had with strangers simply because I use public transportation. Even here in Los Angeles, for the first 3 years, I didn't have a car in California. I didn't drive. So I took buses to get to school, watching the city pass by slowly. That's how I learned the city, the landscape of the city. That's how I overheard interesting stories and met people I never would have met otherwise. Those rides remind me that the world is full of unexpected kindness, shared humanity, and small moments of grace if you're willing to step outside and walk among it. Walking gives you back the small, quiet moments that being locked in cars steal from us. As a child, I walked everywhere without questioning it, to school, to markets, to friends' houses. Now I walk to clear my mind, to pray, to return to myself. Russia taught me that walking is not exercise, it is a conversation with your own soul. Number 5, trusting homemade remedies. Russian minds are filled with herbs and honey and childhood remedies whispered from grandmother to mother to daughter. Healing is not dramatic there, it's gentle. Tea with raspberry jam, mustard plasters, garlic bread, warm soups, chamomile steam, and those cold iodine lines my mother used to trace across my back to get rid of my cough. Simple things that carry generations of care. As Chekhov wrote, love, friendship, respect do not unite people as much as common dislike for something. Our common dislike? Illness. And so mothers fought it with everything nature offered. Homemade remedies teach patience. They taught me to trust in slow healing. They teach me that love is measured in bowls of soup and plates of fruits, in warm blankets and cuddles, not in prescriptions. I'm not saying you never need prescriptions. Of course, sometimes you do need prescriptions. But Russians know, as well as Armenians know, that healing begins with hands that care. Number 6, modesty at church. There's a quiet poetry to Russian reverence. The way women tie their headscarves, the way people stand still for hours in prayer, the way modesty becomes a language not of shame but of honor. Gogol wrote, "The Russian soul is nowhere so modest and reverent as when it stands before God." Russians understand that the way you carry yourself before God matters. Dressing modestly at church, bowing, prostrations, taught me that holiness begins in the heart, but it is expressed through the body. It reminded me that we enter God's house not as consumers, but as worshippers. The posture of our bodies becomes the posture of our souls. Of course, we also have to mention here famous babushkas, these church securities whose whole life mission is to not let anyone wearing jeans to enter the premises of the church. I had many unpleasant encounters with them back in the days, but I also remember some super nice babushkas. So I'm not going to say all of them are like that. But I think devout babushkas, those mean babushkas, don't have the same power now as they had in the 90s. Just because general public in church is much more educated and knows the church etiquette much better. And even babushkas seem kinder today, like generally, than they were back in the days. If you have funny stories to share about babushkas, please share them in the comments down below. I would love to hear them. Number 7, honoring elders and learning from them. In Russia, elders are not tucked away into the background. They're woven into the center of the family's life. Grandparents are storytellers and memory keepers and moral anchors and gentle critics all at once. Or not very gentle, it depends on your grandparents. In my childhood, older people weren't treated as past their prime. They were seen as living libraries of stories. When my grandfather began to speak, my soul fell quiet, not out of obligation, but out of deep instinctive respect. Some of the deepest and most cherished conversations I ever had were with my grandparents. Their stories weren't entertainment, they were warnings, blessings, wisdom distilled through decades of hardship, war, love, and loss. Russians, as well as Armenians, know that age is not something to manage or tolerate, but something to cherish. There's something profoundly grounding about growing up around people whose lives remind you that the world did not begin with you and it will certainly not end with you. Elders carry the weight of the past, but they also offer a kind of gentle prophecy for the future. They teach you to slow down, to listen, to measure your words, to value patience over speed. They also seem to enjoy life much more than my generation does. In their presence, you instinctively soften, your concerns shrink, your heart opens, you realize how much you don't know and how much they do. Unfortunately, now living in the US, neither my husband nor I have our families around. My parents and grandparents are far away, and I see my grandparents no more than once in 2-3 years. But I do try to keep the habit of talking to them regularly over the phone and listen to them. I miss them dearly. I would love my children to grow up surrounded by grandparents and great-grandparents, but it's not possible at this time. I pray that even from afar, the wisdom of their elders will reach them like sunlight through the lessons that they taught me. Number 8, learning history from your city. Russians as well as Armenians live mostly in the past. They're constantly reliving their past traumas, monuments, poems, war memorials, songs. Everything is touched by memory. You grew up feeling the weight of those who came before you, martyrs and soldiers and poets and peasants and saints. The city itself becomes a teacher. Every square whispers a story. Every statue carries greatness or sorrow. Every museum holds a lesson carved out of someone's joy or suffering. As a child, you don't just learn history from textbooks. You breathe it in from the streets. You walk past buildings older than your great-grandparents. You memorize the faces of bronze statues. The past is not distant. It is woven into the architecture, the parks, the metro station, the libraries where the air smells like dust and ink. Living in such a place gives you a strange kind of maturity. You grow up knowing that your life is just one thread in a much larger tapestry, if it makes sense. And somehow that knowledge doesn't crush you. It steadies you. It teaches you gratitude, humility, and the responsibility to honor those who walked before you. Number 9, looking put together at all times. This habit is also an unmistakable Armenian habit, looking put together at all times. Russian women know that beauty is a discipline, not a genetic lottery. Even for a quick trip to the store, you dress like you respect yourself, clean coat, brushed hair, good shoes. The same applies to children. It was bizarre to me to see wealthy Angelino parents here in California taking their kids outside in pajamas. kids. I understand why they do that, but I don't want to do that. My kids need to look presentable when they go out. Not necessarily fancy, but presentable. And you can always spot women raised by Soviet mothers in the crowds in California. For them, presenting yourself well is a celebration of being alive. This habit taught me that you don't dress up for others. You dress up because your dignity deserves it. Even now, as a busy mother, I find strength in this. Well, when I feel overwhelmed, getting ready even a little bit reminds me that beauty brings order, and order brings peace. Number 10, home stays open past 18. Russian culture doesn't rush young people into independence. Families stay together through universities, through transitions, through struggles. Home remains a foundation, not a temporary stop. And of course, for Armenians, it is like that as well. Happiness is like Maeterlinck's bluebird, impossible to catch, but once you let it go, you learn how beautiful and precious are the things you have. Staying close to family preserves that happiness rather than pushing it away too early. This habit taught me that independence doesn't require separation. You can raise strong and responsible adults without severing bond at 18. Family is a lifelong home. Russian and Armenian parents traditionally pay for the weddings of their children and help their children begin a married life with stability, a dowry, financial support, household items, sometimes even an apartment, although most of the families cannot afford it anymore. It is an act of love, continuity, and blessing. Strong beginnings help build a happy family, one that can weather storms. This habit showed me the beauty of generosity across generations. Marriage becomes not just a union of two people, but of two families who believe of supporting love rather than leaving young couples to struggle alone. These habits, simple, ordinary, quietly powerful, are some of the greatest gifts Russian culture gave me. They weren't taught in lessons or repeated in lectures. They were absorbed through everyday life, through the rhythm of seasons, through the wisdom of poets and the patience of mothers. They shaped how I walk through the world, how I raise my kids, how I love my family, and how I see God's hand in the familiar and in the small. These habits remind me that a meaningful life is not built from grand achievements, but from the steady practice of humble human things, walking and reading and honoring and healing, loving. In a way, these habits are little pieces of home that I carry with me into every chapter of my life. And sharing them feels like offering a warm cup of tea on a winter day, a small comfort from one soul to another. As always, thank you, friends, for being here, for supporting this growing corner of faith and motherhood and honest conversation. Every time you show up, whether to listen, to comment, or simply to be present, you help building this community of faith. If this reflection spoke to you, you can find more conversations on my channel, including our new Dust and Glory podcast, a collaboration with the Western Diocese of Armenian Church. If you would like to support me on this channel, you can head out to my Shopify store and buy a small holiday gift for your loved ones. The link is in the description down below. Until next time, dear friends, thank you for watching. Bye!